Good evening. My name is Josina Morita. I'm the chair of the Asian American Caucus. And on behalf of all of the members of the Asian American Caucus, Representatives Teresa Ma, Jennifer Gong Gershowitz, Denise Wang Stoneback, Janet Yang Vor, State Senator Ram Villavalam, McLean County Board Member Sharon Chung, Lake County Board Member Paris Parekh, Lake County Treasurer Holly Kim, myself, MWRD Commissioner and Chair of the Asian American Caucus, Josina Morita, all of our partners for tonight's event, the Asian American Foundation, Anti-Defamation League Midwest, Apna Ghar, Asian American Chamber of Commerce of Illinois, Asian Real Estate Association of America, Chinese American Service League, Chinese American Women in Action, Coalition for a Better Chinese American Community, Hanul Family Alliance, Japanese American Citizens League, Chicago Chapter, ConWin, South Asian American Policy and Research Institute, and United Chinese Americans, Illinois Chapter. We want to thank you all for taking 30 minutes of your evening today, March 16th. 1 year ago today, we all know there was the mass shooting in Atlanta where 8 people were killed, 6 of them Asian American women. And unfortunately, we also know that this has not been an isolated incident in this country's history, nor has it been an isolated incident over the last year and through this pandemic. We continue to see a rise in anti-Asian American hate across the country and here in Illinois, whether it be verbal attacks at the Chicago Botanic Garden, a woman being attacked verbally and with rocks in downtown in front of a grocery store, the murder in Chinatown. And just this week, we saw the woman in New York beat over 125 times. So this has been a difficult year. It is a difficult time for all of us in the Asian American community and the American community in general. And we wanted to take some time to recognize what has happened, reflect on it as Asian Americans and with all of you as a community, but also talk about solutions and things that we have been doing to address anti-Asian hate. And we are very proud as Illinois to become the first state in the nation to require Asian American history in all public schools, because we really truly believe that the best antidote to hate is education. And so we are honored to be here tonight with all of you and with many of our Asian American leaders to really not talk about policy or, politics, but really talk about this from a personal perspective tonight and to really reflect as a community and think about how do we move forward together. So to start us off, we are incredibly honored to have our US Senator, Asian American woman who represents us so proudly here in Illinois and nationally, US Senator Tammy Duckworth.
Thank you so much, Josina. I'm sorry that we're having to get together in this way, but I'm glad that we're all here and I'm proud to be part of everybody in this group here. As an Asian woman, as the eldest daughter in my family, that comes with a lot of responsibility, not the least of which knowing that after my father passed, I was going to be the person to take care of my mom. And during COVID, my mom is pretty indestructible. She's been through a lot in her life, and she's probably the strongest person I know. But to watch my mother and to hear her stories, and when she comes home, of being the victim of harassment really just knocked me back. My mother was, sorry, we're in the middle of a voter-rama, so I apologize for the buzzing sounds in the background. But my mother was buying grapes for my daughter's school lunch, and the grocery store worker kept pushing her out of the way, and finally the grocery store worker said to my mom, I have to wear this mask because of you. This is the Kung flu virus. This is your fault. And my mother just looked at her, she's a strong woman. She looked at her and she's like, listen, leave me alone. I'm just trying to buy grapes for my granddaughter. The Asians and Asian women and elderly Asian women in particular are just trying to buy grapes or go grocery shopping or do all those normal everyday things to live our lives. And yet we are the target of these crimes. And this has to stop. And so I'm so proud that we were able to pass the anti-hate legislation. I'm proud of Illinois for mandating Asian history. But obviously it's not enough because the crimes are still happening. And we have to continue to stand up as a community for one another to make sure that we end this. And the way we do it is to be this voice and to elect more people into office so that we can be those voices to get more folks into the public eye, so that we're no longer the other, so that we are just as American as everyone else. And that's what this hate, this rise in hate against Asian Americans mean to me. It's an intensification of the otherness of my reality, of my existence. But to see it targeted towards my 80-year-old mom is devastating to me. And I know we all feel the same way, and I know we can all do better. So it just pisses me off, and it means we got to do more. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm rolling up my sleeves, and we're going to do more. So I'm glad to be part of this group. Thanks for letting me join y'all.
Thank you so much, Senator. It means so much to all of us to have you in leadership as, a visible leader and speaking on behalf of all of our communities and our experiences. Because these are our experiences. I worry about my 97-year-old grandmother going to the grocery store. And so thank you for being our voice and our advocate. We'll also go to some of our other Asian American Caucus members to share their reflections on what today means and what this last year has meant to them. Teresa Ma.
Thank you so much, Josina. And today really is a call to action because we were all horrified to learn the news a year ago, but it was already when the rates of hate crimes against Asian Americans were increasing, and they've continued to this day. And so it's important to take this opportunity to reflect on what still needs to be done. And I had the good fortune to be able to stand up on the House floor today in the Illinois General Assembly and make remarks commemorating the hate crimes that happened a year ago, but also remind everyone that, despite the fact that, these incidents have taken place, since the inception of our country, they continue, and we need to do more work to educate people and to implement legislation like the TEACH Act. So thank you for including me as part of this, and I'm honored to be in the presence of all these amazing folks who are doing the work to make change in our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader Ma, and we're so proud to have you as the first Asian American in the General Assembly. We continue to see that representation really matters. Next, we have State Representative Jennifer Gong-Gershowitz.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for what is a somber occasion, but also an empowering one. It was 1 year ago today that I was preparing to present the TEACH Act in the House Education Curriculum Policy Committee. And I remember thinking about what I wanted to say to my colleagues and changing my plan presentation, because what I felt at that moment was very different. Because, I think often as Asian Americans, in particular Asian American women, we have sort of internalized the pain and experiences that we've often suppressed. And frankly, that moment felt to me like an inflection point when I was going to demand not only to be seen for our story, my story, to be heard, but I was going to ask my colleagues to do more than just offer words of condolence or sympathy, but to stand with me, to stand with the Asian American Caucus, to do something about it. And we did. We did. We became the first state in the nation to require that Asian American history be taught in our public schools. And that is because of all of you. It's because of the people who locked arms and said, not this time, not this time. We're not going to just take this and go off silently. We're going to stand up and we're going to demand action. And so to me, this is a moment of reflection, but it's also been an incredibly empowering year. And I just want to thank my colleagues at every level, community leaders, advocates, organizers, for standing in solidarity with the Asian American community, because it has made a difference and it will continue to make a difference.
Thank you, Jen. And we have leaders across the state, not just here in Chicago and Cook County. Sharon Chung, McLean County board member in Bloomington. You're muted, Sharon.
Hi, thank you so much, Josina. I hope everybody can hear me. My internet's being a little weird here tonight. I was very honored to stand this morning with my colleagues at the press conference in Springfield. I was reflecting on this a lot this morning and the past couple days. I'm still processing this a lot a year later. But what I think that these terrible events, what they did for me was they made me realize that I really needed to speak up about the things that are really personal and really important to me. Being here in Bloomington, there's not a huge Asian population, but I felt the need to really speak up for the Asians that are here in our community. And I made a big speech at our county board meeting in the weeks following March 16th last year. It's been still very difficult. You know, I'm a mother of 2 young daughters. We've talked about the hate and violence that Asians have experienced throughout the country. And it's sort of trying to figure out that line as a mother, trying to think about how to tell them the realities that we kind of have to face, but also maybe to not break their spirit so much, but just to try to find that line and that tone. And that's been difficult for me, to really be quite honest. But it makes me really happy when I told my children that they're going to be learning Asian American history in schools. My older daughter cheered really loudly. And just to know that they feel seen and are represented. And, you know, one thing that Representative Gongershwitz said this morning, you know, Asian American history is American history. And one thing that I also said is that a lot of people really do react to things that they hate, things that they don't know. And the only way that we can combat that is through education. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how we can move forward and continue to heal as a community. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sharon. You know, it is, you know, I think of the Asian Americans across the state who oftentimes are the only ones in their communities, and to know that we can be a face for them to relate to you and see themselves in is a privilege for us. Next, we also have our Lake County Treasurer, Holly Kim, to share her reflections on today.
Hi, thank you all for having me. And it's a privilege to be in the Asian American Caucus. Truthfully, I think sometimes I took for granted my Asianness, and being a part of the caucus really has made it so thoughtful to me. During that whole summer, where it was the heightened peak of hate crimes against Asians, I threw a candlelight vigil up here with board member Paras Parekh in Highland Park. And it was very comforting to be surrounded by community. I think if I was not a part of the Asian American Caucus, I don't know if I would have done something like that, something so bold and something that, brings the whole community together. And, one of the things that I had said was, it's gotten to a point where at the dinner table, my kids are asking, like, should we be afraid? Like, things are starting to get closer and closer. And then you hear about, the senior gentleman who was shot even here in Chicago in our own Chinatown. And my kids were starting to get afraid. And part of that candlelight vigil of just seeing the turnout, seeing the elected officials who were there, all the way from our Congress people to our state level and even to our county and city level, I said, look, babies, right? Some of my babies are 18 years old, but like, look, babies, look at the people who are here because they support you and they want to protect you and they want to make sure that none of that is going to happen to you, right? And it was such a strong moment. I feel like we've come so far. The Teach Act really helps stave away that whole perpetual foreigner syndrome where people don't think we're part of the US, that we weren't part of, any of the history here in America during this entire time, but we've contributed, we've paid our dues, we have businesses here and we pay our taxes. And so I really applaud the efforts and I'm so honored to have been a part of this, which is greater than I am, in order to continue, one, protecting our children, protecting, the generations after, to say that we're Americans as well. So my thoughts have been that we've certainly come a long way and there's a lot to be proud of. I'm very proud of all of you and your efforts to do all this. And yet seeing the news, even just yesterday, of the 67-year-old lady, there is still yet more for us to do, right? So I'm very proud of how far we've come and I'm very eager and hopeful to do more with the Asian American Caucus and with all of you.
Thank you, Holly. And we're proud to have our first and only Asian American state senator, Ram Villavelam.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Commissioner Morita. And I just want to say my colleagues have just hit all the points as I was listening, that I was thinking of, and just so appreciate them sharing that. This is obviously, a somber moment. I do agree, though, that it's something it reminds us of all the work that we have to do. But it also reminded me, quite honestly, as Senator Duckworth was talking about her mother, of how resilient we are. I think about my mother. She came to this country in 1976 with a 2-year-old, put herself, through school with a 6-year-old and a baby, faced discrimination because of her accent, faced discrimination because she wore a sari. And, 34 years later, she retired as an acting director of a countywide agency. And to me, I think that if we look at the raw news every single day, there is a legitimate reason to lose hope. But I think about the Asian American women, starting with my mom and starting with the many of you on this call. And that gives me hope. That gives me confidence that we are resilient. We will get through this. We're 800,000 Asian Americans strong in the state of Illinois. And quite honestly, it's a lot more than that. We're in the millions because I see a lot of non-Asian American faces on this call. And I know that, and I appreciate you all being here. And I know that together, we're going to root out this hate. And we're going to make sure that our kids, as Holly was saying, I have a 6-month-old behind me that is just fallen asleep, that our kids have a better future and hopefully don't know about this hate, about this discrimination, and don't have to discuss hate crimes. That's the hope. That's why my mom and my dad did what they did for me, and hopefully we can do that for our next generation. So I just appreciate everyone on this call, and I'm so honored and excited about the solidarity that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And that's right. I mean, one thing that has empowered us and gotten us through this last year is that people stood with us. Illinois stood with us, and other communities of color, other immigrant communities, other communities that have experienced discrimination, and those who haven't, stood with us at vigils, personal calls, and all of that meant the world. And so we're very proud to have our very own Lieutenant Governor, Juliana Stratton, who has been a champion standing with us here with us tonight as well.
Hello, everyone. I am Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, and I use she, her pronouns. Thank you, Commissioner Morita, for that warm introduction and for your tireless efforts to advance racial equity. I also want to thank the Asian American Caucus for bringing us together this evening, and I'm so grateful for United States Senator Tammy Duckworth and so many of you sharing what this date means to you and so many Asian American women in this country. You are my sisters. Today's anniversary, marking 1 year since the tragic shootings in Atlanta, bring up so many emotions that are difficult for any person to navigate on their own. On days like today, it is especially important that we come together so that our friends, loved ones, and colleagues can have a shoulder to lean on when the anger and grief are too much. So that members of the AAPI community in Illinois and beyond can rest assured that they do not stand alone in the fight against Asian hate. And we come together because even in the darkest of days, unity and solidarity can shine through to make something beautiful. The famed Asian American activist Yuri Kochiyama once said, "Life is not what you alone make it. Life is the input of everyone who touched your life and every experience that entered it. We are all part of one another. Know that we carry your pain with you and we share your vision for a better world. In this time of mourning, may we honor the lives lost to violence and bigotry by holding close the vibrant life that we can create as part of one another. Governor Pritzker and I stand side by side with you so every community can have the safe, happy life that they deserve today, tomorrow, and every day." Thank you. And Jacina, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, and thank you for your leadership. As Lieutenant Governor, thank you to the governor for his leadership in signing the TEACH Act. Jennifer talked about how we've taken this year of pain and difficulty and turned it into a time of empowerment and change. This is a turning point. You know, we talk about young people not knowing who we are as Asian Americans, including Asian Americans. And I look forward to the day that my kids can learn Asian American history in their schools. And really, it's been historic, what we've done here in Illinois, and want to thank our bill sponsors, Jennifer Gong-Gershwitz and Ron Villablom, for their leadership. So Jennifer, please tell everybody about what we have done together and changing the future of Illinois.
Well, first, I just want to say thank you to Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton for all of your support, yours and Governor J.B. Pritzker, who have truly walked the walk. This is a moment when we needed people to step up and to turn tragedy into teach. We passed the TEACH Act, and we have now had the opportunity to talk about our experiences, to share who we are, to elevate Asian American history and stories, and in a response, a thoughtful response to violence and to tragedy. That's what turning tragedy into action is all about. It's who we are as Asian Americans. It's who we are as Americans. It is an example of what we have always done throughout American history. It represents the best of us. And so, to me, this teachable moment is now about the next step. It's about driving forward, making sure that TEACH is implemented in our schools in a way that is inclusive and empowering. And I'm incredibly proud to be a part of a coalition of legislators, advocates, educators, and community members who are committed to doing this work, because this is where now we find out all of the hard work that has gone into passing this legislation will propel us to seeing it in our communities and in our schools. And that's ultimately what this is all about. It's about building empathy. So thank you to everyone who has tuned in, everyone who has committed to helping us get across the finish line and realize what we set out to do a year ago.
Thank you, Jennifer. And this has become so much bigger than us right now. This is about future generations. It's also about the rest of the country. And this partnership has grown from just being about Illinois. We are the first. Our mantra in the Asian American Caucus is we are the first, but we will not be the last. And that is our mantra with the Teach Act as well. We were the first, but we will not be the last. And New Jersey also recently passed the Teach Act, and we are growing this movement around Asian American history as American history across the country. And really want to thank our partners, particularly at the Asian American Foundation, who see this as a moment for not just us here in Illinois, but for the rest of the country. So Norman Chen, please.
Thank you, Josina. Thank you, everyone. My name is Norman Chen, and I'm the CEO of the Asian American Foundation, or TAF for short. I am deeply honored to be here with such a distinguished group of leaders in Illinois. Today, we honor each of those tragically killed a year ago and stand in solidarity with the family, friends, and loved ones they left behind. TAF was founded in the aftermath of this event. Our mission is to combat hate, but also to promote belonging and prosperity for all AAPIs, 23 million strong around the country. 1 year later, the pain of this day still weighs heavily on our communities as we continue to face an onslaught of attacks around the country, more than 11,000 in the past year. As we commemorate the lives that have been taken far too soon, we must remember there is hope in unity and in action. Because while it is right that we mourn together, we must also work together to demand a better future for our children. Illinois is a leader on many fronts, but we want to highlight two signature pieces of legislation. Under Senator Duckworth's leadership, alongside her congressional colleagues, we saw the passage of the historic bipartisan COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act, signed into law by President Biden last May. We'd also like to thank Governor Pritzker and the Asian American Caucus for their national leadership. The Teach Act is exemplary bipartisan legislation, as we all know, to build holistic, inclusive K-12 education practices that integrate Asian American history and experiences into the learning of every child in Illinois. This is a tremendous undertaking that will fundamentally shape the course of how our communities are perceived and seen, not only in Illinois, but nationally. It is not enough for AAPIs living in this country to feel safe. We must also know that we belong. We are a critical part of American history, culture, and society, and TAF will work until that fundamental truth is reflected across our country. Thank you, everyone, for the work you do and for giving rise to a movement to protect Asian lives. We look forward to working alongside you to lift up our communities together. Thank you.
Thank you, Norman, and thank you for your leadership nationally and your partnership with us here in Illinois. Today was a day for us to reflect. It's been a long day for a lot of us. We started with a press conference this morning in Springfield. We had a convening with nearly 100 educators and advocates this afternoon to talk about the next steps of the Teach Act, and ended our day tonight with you all to take a moment both to remember and to reflect, but also to join together and make a commitment to action, to the next steps of making the Teach Act real. We have over 100,000 teachers across 800 school districts here in Illinois that most of them have never heard of the Teach Act. Many of them have never learned Asian American history, let alone feel equipped to teach it this fall. And so we are asking you to join us in this year of Teach, to reach out to teachers that you know, to your school districts, and let them know about the Teach Act. Ask them what kind of supports they need to be able to join us and to teach Asian American history this fall. People can sign up for the year of Teach and find resources on how to learn more and teach Asian American history at our website, www.asianamericancaucus.org, as well as Asian Americans Advancing Justice. We will be reaching back out to many of you as partners. Today was a day of reflection, but it's also the beginning of something new. We are so proud to be joined with you all today, and look forward to working together. And again, from the bottom of all of our hearts as the Asian American Caucus and all of our partners, you are our community. We are here for you. And it has been such an honor to share this evening with you all. So everybody, thank you so much and be well.
Thanks, Josina. Yay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Josina. Thanks for all the incredible work organizing this event. Happy to be here with everyone.
Thank you, Fritz. Thank you, Assessor.
Thank you, Josina. You do a great job as always. Great to be a part of this.
Thank you, Judy. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
You too.